Hmm. You can do a
Okay.
transcription too if you want to transcribe your notes for your note taking if you want.
Read and transcribe. Yeah, I think it's doing that pretty
It does
much.
both. Okay for you.
Yeah. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to basically invite everyone of you to this presentation. Today, we're going to talk more about solution documentation, about the keys, is about just giving a quick introduction about what it is. I'm sure most of you know what it is, but still, when I visit client sites, they're still doubtful about what it is. Is it just a folder where I put documents or things like that? So I just want to take a quick, give you guys a quick introduction about what SolDoc is, and also want to introduce you to a plan of how to get this rolled out to your customers in just about 3 weeks, actually. And if you're still thinking about what it is and how it's beneficial for your organization, I'm going to give you guys an evaluation sheet also, where you'll be able to put together some answers here, and probably while answering the sheet itself, you'll realize that how valuable it is for you. But if you can send it back to me via email, the sheet, I'll be able to give you a one-page summary of the key benefits you'll get from using SolDoc. So without further delay, let's go on to the PowerPoint. I'll keep the PowerPoint short, I can promise that. uh, so about me, I'm Srini. I'm a solution manager and a focus builder architect. I'm a proponent of SAP ALM. I feel that it greatly benefits any organization, saving time, effort, and simplifying the whole implementation. And as Synergetic, I'm responsible for the solution delivery and architecture. So now, what is solution documentation? You probably must have seen these any of these screenshots when you log onto Solution Manager. So solution documentation is basically a collection of all the artifacts, which means that all the documentation associated with a business process, actually. I can give you some examples like the process description itself, or the process diagram, or the test cases associated with it. All the kind of information put together, well, when it is tagged to the process, it makes it very convenient for anyone to use. And who are the stakeholders of this? It could be business, the IT, the implementation team. Everybody can benefit from it. And now it's not just a repository. That's just the starting point of it. So it also has the collection of all the process steps, like I've shown over here, the create, purchase order. That's from process steps. When you group all the process steps under the process itself, there are a lot of downstream benefits. For example, you'll be able to quick with a click, you'll be able to generate a manual a test case, actually. So which groups all these steps together, and you'll be able to log into the system, do the testing, record the results, and things like that. So it saves a lot of time and by generating all the stuff. But more than that is the accuracy of it. So while you innovate the process itself, you're actually capturing all the key information, and the life cycle starts from there. You'll be able to update it and maintain it as when you go to the maintenance of the project also. So also, the solution documentation has the ability to connect the business process and the documentation to the other downstream change documents also. For example, you see the bottom screen over here, you see that the requirements, there are three assigned to it. So this is basically establishing a process-centric point of view of all change management activities. So the benefit of that is because is the whole SAP is an innovation exercise where you're implementing target business processes. So by understanding what are all the downstream change documents associated with the business process, it gives a much better view and also adds to the traceability, actually. So now, given all these functions about storing the document here and process steps and all this stuff, but there's much more apart from that. The one of the main functions of solution documentation is that it facilitates the consumption of best practices. So all the things you've seen over here, these are information, all the processes. What I mean is, they are actually brought here from the best practice content. So you start with the content, the best practice content, and you pick and choose the process you want to implement, and you move them to the organization specific folders. And that becomes the starting point of your process documentation. Second. So process documentation, one of the key benefits of this platform is to enable you to consume best practices more easily. So for convenience sake, I listed out all the benefits of process documentation. So you'll be able to explore the best practices very easily. Just import the content and you'll be able to like explore and at the same time consume it also. You'll be able to like connect the requirements to the business process. That's very important. Business is always interested to know what happened to my requirement. What are all the processes which are associated with my requirement? In that way that all the project sponsors and other stakeholders they don't know what are all the transfers and other associated things with the process, but requirement definitely they know what are the requirements they wanted and especially the priority ones. Okay, so now this gives an access for the business also. So if you're giving access to business to SolDoc, they'll be able to see what's all the documentation associated with it, as well as also the change document associated with it. So it adds a lot to the visibility. So nowadays, as you can see, the SAP is moving towards providing a more transparency to all the activities in the project. That's one of the key things in Activate, right? Making it more transparent so that decision making is more easy. So you'll be able to start the documentation from day one. A lot of projects start the documentation after go live. That's because they're not using the platform correctly and they're doing everything from scratch. They never had time. But here, a lot of it is already brought in from the best practice documentation. So you just have to update that actually. So it's much easier and you can do that from day one. So, and connecting all change management activities to business process, that's fantastic actually, because you'll be able to establish the process-centric point of view from the day one of the implementation. And the managing the life cycle. This is very crucial, especially if your organization has a requirement to make the solution documentation or the process documentation auditable actually. So here, whenever you make a change to any invoice or any object, you'll be able to like tie that to the documentation. Make it mandatory to check that the documentation is also updated, and the change document or the transports will carry the documentation change from the development branch to the production branch. So when I say branches, these are ways, it's a mechanism within solution documentation where you'll be able to like preserve the production documentation very effectively by creating these branches like development, maintenance, and production. And documentation is very easily accessible in solution documentation because it is attached to a process. If you know what the process is and the organizational division or the department which holds the process, you'll be able to go and quickly see everything listed under that. Now, here I want to tell you like, now there is a platform and there's best practice, all these things, how you look at them as a one entity, for example. So in an S4HANA exercise project, usually there's a good opportunity to consume best practices. So you start with SAP best practices. How do you do it? You import the best practice content, and the project team members, each work stream will go and explore the best practice content. And it's so best practice is like, are they like a warehouse, everything is in there. So you have to first go and pick what you need from there and, bring it, separate it from the whole content and create an organizational folder structure where you want to see within that what's consumed and what needs to be like adjusted, like because sometimes your organization can consume a best practice as it is. They need to make modifications to that. So now without the platform, just exploring the best practices on the internet and then looking at them, it'll take you nowhere. So use the solution documentation platform for that. So take all the content and put in the solution manager. And once you identify the gaps in the best practices, create them as requirements. And you're gonna take whenever you take best practices, the process description, test cases, a lot of the documentation comes with that. These are the artifacts which Activate gives you as part of the best practice content. More than 50% of the job is done right there for the documentation. Take that and update that. And also the gaps in the best practice, you're going to create them as requirements and attach them to the business process itself. So that's what step number 3, you modify the best practice to make it target business process. Why you do that? Because using best practice as a starting point is much lower in risk than trying to innovate a business process from scratch. SAP always says that. And once you have your target business process and the change management follows, and you have your documentation pretty much ready right there, you can also put together all the process steps which which you decide to use for the particular business process. So this is what I recommend for solution documentation usage, saying that mix it up with the best practice consumption and use the artifacts as much as possible so that you'll be able to make the documentation much easy. Now let's go into one of the artifacts. So I have this project plan. I actually posted in the chat already, and just let me know if someone can get to that. So I put together a 3 weeks plan where you can simply roll out solution documentation without any major customization to it. You really don't need to customize anything. It comes with a lot of features where you can't even use 5% of it for a normal project. It has so many things in it, especially some great things in it. So I've listed all the good stuff, which I know. Like I said, there's so much stuff which I may also not know about it. So the first thing is that there's some prerequisites. Okay, one is the installation and other system preparation. Your basis team can help you with that. If not, you have to work closely with your basis team and finish off most of these steps, like the build and the basic configuration and infrastructure, and also you need to do the process management work center. Actually, so that's very important to be completed. And then remember that solution manager, I always recommend to have a 2-system landscape. Okay, it's the recommended way. In that way, you'll be able to provide some things and also make the dev as your testing platform by creating a sandbox environment there. Whereas your production of Solman is like a real production, and it is connected to the production systems. Actually, in that way, you don't have to worry about damaging things in the production while it's being used. Also, we should understand that the production Solman will contain the actual productive documentation. So we don't want to do any development there. So 2-system landscape is pretty reasonable for a solution manager project. Okay, if you want to go 3, that's up to you, but you probably don't need to have a 3-system like a dev queue. Most of the time, I was able to do the end user, the testing and sign off in the dev itself, actually. Okay, so once you finish off all the basic setup of the Solman, that's when the actual work starts. You still want to have like a stakeholder workshop with the end client. But again, like initially I said, this is I'm talking about a SolDoc rolling as it is and not really customizing it. But the workshop gives an idea about what the customer is looking for and what is the intent they have to use the platform. And a lot of ideas will spring up saying that, hey, can I have this custom reports? This is the report I need to have for documentation every month and stuff like that. Definitely make a note of all these requirements. But from my experience, about 80 to 90% of all the requirements which client ask for are already available in SolDoc. So in this workshop, you feel happy that the product is pretty versatile and it has pretty much everything they need. But if something doesn't solve and it's customizable, you need to do that. Just make a note of that. Okay. And the next line is the folder structure. This is very important, actually. There's always a discussion about whether we should just use the folder structure given by the best practice content as it is, or whether we should customize it. Okay. My experience with SolDoc, I like to tell you that it's always beneficial to customize this folder structure. Here's what the reason is. So the product, the solution documentation, it's intended for our client and their business team also, if possible, the IT team and the business team, as well as the system integrator, all of them want to use it as a platform for all the process documentation. So the folder structure should make sense for their organization and their project, actually. So the SAP, the module names given there may not make sense all the time because they may have a different name there for the project as well as the business units. So it is totally okay. And actually, I recommend that you create the folder structure according which matches this, the organization, because we want them to use it. We want them to like that it is named in the way they can use it effectively. So this is an important thing. So probably initially you can circulate like an Excel sheet with like a hierarchy in it, like, what is the organizational unit, and take it down all the way to the end-to-end process or the modular process name of it. Even the process name could be slightly different there. So put that in an Excel sheet, and when you go to the production system level, you'll be able to like put it down there. So, but if you want to leave it like an SAP naming convention, that's up to you. There's no restriction there as such. So another important thing is presenting change management option. Whether you want to enable, this is very crucial. First of all, let's try to understand what this is. This is what making the solution documentation change management enabled. So what this means is that, let us say you're making an enhancement to an order, actually, which is already implemented in the system. And at that time, the process documentation matches 100% with the what's there in the system, like a configuration wise. But now when you're making a change, what happens? You make a change and you make a transport out of it, and you move it, it goes for testing and it goes to production and everything. But probably after making the change, you go into the solution documentation and you make those updates there, and you just leave it there sometimes. If it's a SharePoint or even in SolDoc, some people don't know how to use change management. But in Solution Manager, there's a feature where you can go to the maintenance branch and initiate that change by recording whatever changes you're making and tying that up to the transport. So that when the transport goes to queue and production, this documentation is moved by the transport itself all the way to the production branch. So it means that the documentation is in the production branch of solution documentation is up to date. It gets updated at the same time when the transport moves. This is a great feature, especially when if your organization is looking for an auditable process documentation. So another interesting decision is the BPML tool. Although it's not so popular, there are like better tools out there like Signavio and things like that. This is also an industry standard way of documenting a process. So you can make a decision. There are always the BPML tools available in the best practice documentation. You can actually show it to the people and say, hey, do you want to use this? Very visual. If you're doing business process monitoring tomorrow, this can be very helpful. So record all these decisions, make a decision document out of it, and send it out to the team, and then go ahead and kick off your solution documentation configuration using the guided procedure. If you have any transports, you can move it to prod, but a lot of it has to be repeated on both systems when it comes to solution documentation. And solution, what is it? Solution is basically a logical grouping. It's a container of everything a particular project or an organization uses it. An organization may have multiple projects, that is fine. But in general, one solution is enough for an organization, even though you're doing 10 different initiatives in and around SAP itself. But that's fine. Still, one solution is more than enough. But if you're making multiple solutions, make sure that the landscape you're interested in working on, I mean, the systems should be part of that solution. Okay, that's very important. So another key thing is training. So put sufficient time for creating the documentation. It's very important to create some customized documentation. Actually, you could use the SAP documentation, but make it more organization specific, and also create a platform in the development environment where they can actually upload documents and match the folder structure in the development environment also, so that they can practice and try it. So train project teams on specific areas, on solution documentation functions, how to use it, how to upload, how to download, how to delete. Of course, you don't want them to delete it, but how to put process steps together. And if change management is enabled, how do you tie up that? Because Charm is another complex system too, where of course, in Focus Build, this is very easy, where you can tie up solution documentation to the Charm document. But when both independent modules, non-Focus Build, it could be a little complex. But training can help them with the situation. The success of SolDoc is all about training, enablement, and support. Actually, the tool is only 10% of the whole story. It's about how much you can support them. Security. When I say develop custom role, be careful with that. It could be a rabbit hole. So do not entertain a custom role altogether. Custom roles using SAP template roles. Remember that. So you take an SAP template role and slightly customize it. For example, if they want to remove delete option, I recommend that. Only some people should have delete option, but never start a role from scratch. You end up doing months in just making the rules for solution documentation. So with all this, you can finish off security pretty quickly. Actually, just within 1 or 2 weeks, you can finish up all security for SolDoc. And don't forget to give a final presentation of a configuration validation with the new folder structure. Make the business feel happy about it. Make them ready to own it. Actually, they're going to own it. As a configurator of solution documentation or anything in Solution Manager, you're really not part of the whole transaction, right? You're outside. You come into picture only when there's a problem. So let them own it from day one, even at the time of training itself. Prepare a test script with all the functions. Let them pick a group of testers. Let them test it and give you a sign off, and go live and give the best support you can for your project. That's it. It's not that complex as what people think. Solution documentation is pretty easy, and you just have to know how to engage your people to make it more successful. Engaging your team from day one, engaging your business, IT, and your client's team from day one is the mantra for solution documentation success. Now let's take a look at the other sheet I made. So I put together an evaluation sheet. I think I'm going to stop in about 2-3 minutes as promised. So this evaluation sheet can actually help you make some decision about what are the benefits of SolDoc. So fill it up, put in as what are the comments you want to put in here. Like, if you want to put a line or yes, no, or even a description about what's going on with the certain decisions, like things like whether you need to make it change enabled, the solution documentation, or how is it done today. So if you can send it back to me by email, I'll be able to respond to you within 1 day with like a 1-page summary about the highlights about how your organization will benefit, from using solution documentation. I'm sorry if it's long. It's about I think 21 points. So, but these are all some questions, which if you're having a client and you're proposing SolDoc, they're going to ask you the same questions too. Example saying like, who needs access to SolDoc? This is a good question. They always ask, who should be the stakeholders of it? So whether it's business, IT, yeah, everybody needs to have access to it. So when you're making a security for it, use the roles in it very effectively. So these are the questions I have for you. So feel free to fill up the sheet and send it to me. I can give you a one-page summary. I'm planning to make this automated on my website so that you can fill it up right there and get the answers right there. But meanwhile, keep the sheet, and if you need to circulate this within your organization, that's fine. And feel free to use this project plan as it is and make changes to it. This has been the plan which I've used before, time tested. So let me go back. I'll put them both in the chat, these files. Let me know if anyone did not get it. With this, I want to open up for questions.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in the chat. I don't know if it's muted or I can't see them from a configuration point of view.
Okay. Okay, I'll post them. Meanwhile, feel free to ask any questions.
Thanks.
Anyone? It should come to you guys now.
Oh, now I got it. Yep.
So how many of you are using or anyone is using solution documentation? You can give your feedback on that. Like, Steve, you mentioned that initially everyone was doubtful about it, but once it's implemented in live, they love the capability. Right?
Yeah, it was just a matter of training that convinced them. I was showing them, it was laborers actually. I had to demonstrate and document their current processes, and then the as is to be process to be able to show them the time saving effect and also the tracking effect, because they had multiple versions of documents, of the same document, I should say. And when they were processing their change documents, they would specify a particular document, a functional spec, or whatever the document is. And you go and research, well, which one are you using? Because there was multiples in the 7.1. They were just, like I told you, they were using it, as you pointed out, just as a repository, folder repository, and they just stuck them in there, but no versioning control or anything. So they'd go and get their change, but they weren't, I don't know how they determine the latest and greatest version of that document, because it's been changed so many times, Are they starting with the right version? And so once I documented all that and showed them the mechanics of solution documentation, they quickly, half of them quickly just jumped on the bandwagon. The other ones took a little bit of time to convince them, because they liked the control that he had, and especially the approvers, the document approvers and all that stuff. So they had their method, and I just had to convince them this is the better way to do it, and tying it all together like you did it to the the best practices, the process documentation, and linking all the related artifacts together. And they kind of enjoyed that, especially on how many times did an object change. Well, in their old process, they had a hard time understanding how they could get that information to within SolDoc. You can just do a quick query and it'll tell you how many changes they made to that particular object, if it's done right, maintained correct.
True.
And then the other thing was, the biggest thing was the audit piece, showing the auditors how they can quickly go and find the information they wanted to see all in one spot, instead of having to go multiple SharePoint sites or whatever to pull the information together.
Okay. Yeah, and that's one common problem everyone has, saying that they have multiple copies of the same document, and with that, many times they kind of conclude that okay, we don't know what's original and no one tracked it. But one way of alleviating the problem is that by putting all documentation attached to a process itself, rather than leaving any orphan documents. That's one way of trying to like reduce the problem a little bit. But you still can upload a a duplicate, nothing's going to stop that, to be honest with you, in SolDoc. I think that's one limitation. By putting in a folder, for example, but in a process itself, the business process folder itself, at least you can see that, oh, there's one more document, who uploaded it, kind of thing. And also we can create like the process owners who can be alerted when there is change to that particular process folders and the documentation there, actually. Okay, I'm just trying to share the